Welcome to Book Time with Ryan. I am Ryan, and today I'll be doing a comparison of the movie Finest Hours, The Finest Hours, with the book The Finest Hours. I very recently did a review of The Finest Hours, which I will include in a link above. I watched this movie today, and we watched it in theaters, but there's more to it than that. Long ago, when I was in the Coast Guard, I was a public affairs officer, and I was the coordinator for a Department of Defense program called the Joint Civilian Orientation Conference, which basically a Department of Defense outreach program to introduce influential private sector civilians to the military. I would coordinate the Coast Guard as part of that. Well, one of the people we had on one of the trips was a guy named Sean Bailey, and he was just the nicest guy, very approachable, just great. And I stayed in touch with him. I've stayed in touch with other people, but I stayed in touch with him, and he did movies like Tron Legacy, which was awesome, and Gone Baby Gone, which is so great. We actually watched that on my ship before I ever met Sean. So I knew Sean, and he moved to Disney, and I found out Disney had the rights to The Finest Hours, and was going to make a movie, The Finest Hours. So I emailed Sean, and I was like, congratulations, what a great story. The Finest Hours is a story that if you're in the Coast Guard, you know, hopefully. If you went to the Coast Guard Academy, it was one of the stories that we were told. It's legendary. And I just told him that congratulations, what a great story. Look forward to seeing it. And Sean replied quickly with, hey, thanks. If you ever want to go to the set, let me know. It's being filmed in Massachusetts, and we can get you there. Some scenes being filmed. And I was like, oh, hell yeah. I'm definitely going to do that. I'm going to look up at a time that will work immediately. I was dating Diane, became my wife, and we decided this is before Noelia was born, before Noelia was conceived. We made a decision we were going to go up there. I think the week that we went, or the weekend that we went, there was also a Coast Guard Academy thing going on, maybe a homecoming or a reunion, not for my class, but I went up, showed her the academy, and also we went and checked out Boston, and then we went to the site of not they weren't on site, they weren't filming at sea, but there was this town that they were filming in. I totally forgot what town it was now. And we went and we met up with people from the crew. We had to sign a non-disclosure agreement, and then we went over to the area they were filming in, and we hung out with one of the producers, Dorothy, or executive producer Dorothy. Goes by Dot. Dot was so cool, so nice. We just had a blast. We stayed as long as we could. We met Graham McTavish, who's one of the characters in it. We saw them film a scene, basically where they go and they run up on the 36-500 surf boat, runs up and finds the Pendleton, and they're like, oh my gosh, there it is. And it's kind of like, how are we gonna get all these people on this boat? We were there for that. That was just so cool to see. Graham McTavish was so nice too. We even like talked to their vocal person, because everyone had a New England accent, or most of the people had New England accents, and they had this coach, and she actually listened to what I was saying, and she was like, here, say some stuff, we'll talk a little bit, and then I'll tell you where I think you're from. And no shit, she said, oh, I'm getting from talking to you that you were probably born or you had some time in Western Pennsylvania. I was born in Pittsburgh, and grew up in the South, maybe like in Tennessee, which is true. I grew up in Tennessee, was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and then we had her do my wife, and she was like, there's some very interesting stuff going on here. It sounds like it could be from the South, which she grew up after age 12 in Virginia. But there's also something else there. What was that? That was Uruguay, because she was born in Uruguay and lived there until she was 12. So that was pretty cool too. We ate there. We ate with the crew and stuff, and just loved it. When the movie came out in theaters, we of course went to see it with my brother and sister-in-law, and loved it. There are differences between the book and the movie. These differences are not huge, and I think some of it helped fill some of the drama that you got in the book that you wouldn't have had in the movie because of what they covered. The book covers the rescue of the Fort Mercer and the rescue of Pendleton, two tankers. The movie, while it references some of the stuff that's happening with the Fort Mercer, we don't go there at all. We just kind of hear stuff that's going on the radio. So the movie is entirely about Pendleton. There are other differences. One of the ones I've heard I think some people weren't happy about, although if you didn't know about it, you wouldn't have cared, is that in the movie, there's some conflict with Bernie Weber's wife and kind of what's going on. She does not like their husband's being sent off to die. That's understandable. And she goes to confront the commanding officer of the station. The reality was, in real life, she had the flu and she was bedridden the whole time. So she didn't really know what was going on for most of this rescue. She didn't find out about it until later. But I think because there was only one rescue being covered in the movie, there's a lot of, I don't want to say time to fill, because there were probably, I don't know, if you're not going to cover the Fort Mercer, I think what you're going to be covering is this trip out with Bernie, and there's only so many waves and slamming and heavy seas that you can take before it's like, okay, what else is going to happen? So there had to be something happening on land, because with the Pendleton rescue, it was really all CG-36-500. Other things, we don't really get a total idea of how they met, which is in the movie. It's kind of funny in the book because, and this is actually a deleted scene because I watched the extra materials. Basically, Bernie was supposed to go out on a blind date in Provincetown, Massachusetts, and a car broke down, and they couldn't get there, and the date never happened, and he had to call and let the girl know that he wasn't going to make it. Well, the operator, and this is in the days where you had operators having to connect lines, she listened in on the call, and then Bernie Weber started getting calls at the station for Webb, which is Weber. And it was this girl, this unidentified girl, and she would call every so often, and they would have these long talks, and eventually he was like, look, either tell me who you are and let's meet, or don't call me anymore. And they decided they were going to have a double date, and they went out, and that's when he found out that she was on this call, and then they got more and more serious. They were kissing on the first date, which we didn't see in the movie, and then they got married. Other things you don't see, you don't really see what happens to the front of Pendleton, which is probably good because it's not good news. They find one person frozen in a compartment in the front near the forecastle. Everyone else, one person jumped, I believe, and died, and the rest of them they never found, I think. Or maybe the person dove off of the front of the Fort Mercer. I can't remember anymore. Or maybe that was another rescue too, because they did talk about other rescues in the book. In the rescue scene, Tiny, which is this big dude, he is he dies in the middle of it. And it's really rough on them. And then Casey Affleck's character has time to kind of say goodbye to the ship, and then he leaves. He's the last one off. In reality, Tiny and this other guy were the last two off. They got thrown, or Tiny at least got thrown. He's a big guy. He's over 300 pounds. He got thrown from the ladder, and they tried to pull him out, and he couldn't be pulled out. And then as they were trying to grab him, a wave picked up the surf boat and threw it into the side, kind of like, probably like it was like surfing into the Pendleton, the hull of the Pendleton, and it crushed Tiny, and he died. We didn't see that in the movie. I don't know if that's maybe a Disney kind of thing. They didn't want to show a guy getting crushed. I understand that. But still, there was still half the crew left in the movie, and in the book, they were the last ones. So it was really kind of either get Tiny or get that last guy off the ladder, the Jacob's ladder, and that's what they ended up doing is got the guy off the Jacob's ladder, and that meant Tiny died. Or he may have already been crushed and dead at that point anyway. We don't really know, and there's really no way to go back and find out. Once they get everyone off, in the movie, the stern section that's floating there sinks. I don't think that happened. I think it may have rolled a little bit, but it was there for a while. I think that kind of modeled what happened with the bow section of the Fort Mercer, because a couple people died trying to get off of there, but they did rescue a few people from the bow section of the Mercer, and within 20 minutes or so, we'll just say minutes because I can't remember if it was 20 minutes. Within minutes of the last person being removed from the bow section, it reared up, went vertical, and sank. And that's kind of what you saw in the very end of the rescue, where they got the last person off, and almost immediately the ship sank. I don't think that's how it happened in real life. The bow section of Pendleton stayed there for a long time until it had to be destroyed as it broke apart. The bow section of Fort Mercer did sink. The stern section of Fort Mercer, like 13 guys stayed on there because they thought it was more dangerous to leave, and they actually were able to tow the stern section of the Fort Mercer back to, I can't remember if it was Maine or Massachusetts, and then eventually down, I think, it was Newport, Rhode Island. Neither of those. Rhode Island. They pulled into Newport, Rhode Island, and eventually took it down to New York City, and eventually was refitted, and then also had another catastrophic failure of the hull later. But you don't see that stuff because this is really just about Pendleton. I felt like there was some more tension on 36500. I don't know if that's what was actually happening. It didn't seem like that in the book, but maybe there's other tellings where you do get more of that. He did write an autobiography, I think. Bernie Weber did. So maybe some of that's in there. You also get some of the friction on the Pendleton crew, and I'm not sure if that happened either. I feel like that may have happened on the stern section of Fort Mercer. Some craziness, I think, including somebody sitting inside a lifeboat with a hatchet, thinking that at any point, if it started to sink, he would cut the lines loose and float away. But I don't remember if that was true. There was a religious element removed from the book in the movie. They do some kind of sea shanty kind of singing on 36500. The book, I believe it's a religious song. And also, we don't really have a whole lot of that feel for kind of the guiding hand of God feel that Bernie Weber had for his crew. Because his father was a minister, and he felt like I think his father wanted him to go into the ministry, and at some point Bernie, through this process, believed that God was using him to save people, and this was his moment to do something good like that. You didn't really get that story, and at the end of it, you have everyone kind of line up with their lights and show the way home for the crew. In the book, they see the buoy. They did still go over the bar in a much easier. It was following seas, but they got over the bar pretty quickly, faster than I think Bernie Weber realized, and there wasn't much he could see. But eventually, he saw the buoy that let him know that they were inside the harbor and out of the biggest danger. So while people didn't drive up like they did in the movie and turn their lights on, they were at the pier waiting to help the crew offload the survivors and take them to areas where they could get warm and eat and get checked with by the doctor. So there are differences, but I think they're fine. Even if you read the book, I think the only thing that probably not everyone was happy about was that kind of conflict with Miriam and the commanding officer, and kind of her getting involved with all this when in reality she was in bed the entire time with the flu. But without having the Fort Mercer in the movie, it's kind of like, what else would they have done? I guess they could have provided more detail of some of the things that were happening. But some of that would be guesswork too. Nobody survived the bow section, so you don't really know how to do the bow section without making a lot up. And this is a over 70-year-old story. So there aren't a lot of people with firsthand knowledge of the actual rescue that were around when the movie came out. I don't know if there was anybody around when the movie came out. There were some people around still when the book was being written. So maybe it's secondhand information or something was passed along. I don't know. But I liked both of them. I really enjoyed the movie. I think it's one of the must-see movies for the Coast Guard. I really appreciated Sean getting us to the set and Dot taking us around and showing us around and letting us experience a scene and see a lot of the different parts of the set, including the engine room and this giant tank with a giant green screen around it. And it was the first time I had been on set of a movie, and so far it's the last time I've been on the set of a movie, and I really, really liked it. And the actors that we talked to, I said something to Chris Pine. I said we talked a little bit with Graham McTavish, talked to the crew, talked to Dot, talked to a lot of different people, and it was just really neat to be there and see that. The set work that they had was amazing. They also had some other 36-footers, real 36-footers on hand that were either original or I think maybe rebuilt or at least touched up as backups to use. They didn't use the actual 36-500 because that was an operating boat in the water, but they had other models that they could paint to be like it. And when I say models, I mean other actual boats, not models of the boat, but real boats that they had prepared for the movie. So it was a very cool experience. I think they did a great job with The Finest Hours. I think it's what I would want in a movie, and I think they did it justice, did the rescue justice, and were as honest as they could be without dulling it down at all. They had to do some things to make it an interesting movie and to keep different groups interested in it. Nobody really wants to see just a rescue, or well, maybe like on YouTube, but just a rescue or just a love story. So to be able to put some different things in there for people to enjoy, I think was a must, and I think they did a great job at it. I've already told you that I did a review of the book, so check that out so you can have a little bit more of an idea of the story. And if you haven't watched The Finest Hours, Disney's The Finest Hours, check it out. It's really cool. Really well done. And that's it. So thanks for being here today. I will talk to you later.